Imagine this, you just finished your webinar, 300 people registered, 80 showed up, 5 bought. So what do you do with the other 295 that didn't buy? Because if you figure out the right answer to this question, that could be key to scaling your business with webinars. But if your answer is send a replay link and a few follow-up emails, that's what most webinar hosts do, then that's gonna cost you somewhere between 30 and 40% of your potential revenue. So here's the thing, right? The problem usually isn't the webinar, the offer, or the ads. Sometimes what happens or doesn't happen in the 21 to 30 days after your webinar ends. And in this video, I'm gonna show you the 6 components of a post-webinar sales sequence that recovers the revenue most hosts are leaving on the table. We're covering segmentation, AI-powered follow-up, multi-channel outreach, and idea 4, which is something almost nobody in the webinar space is actually doing. But it might be the highest leverage component in the whole system. So stick around for that one. I'm Terence from Radical Marketing. We've generated over 2 million event leads for coaches, course creators, and service businesses since 2014. And one thing I've learned after all those events that we've promoted, the webinar is just the beginning. So let me paint you a picture of what a typical post-webinar follow-up looks like. The webinar ends, the next few days follow a very predictable pattern. Replay link, bonus expiry notice, last chance email, final reminder, and then silence. You assume that if they didn't buy, they weren't interested. So you move on to planning the next webinar. And that makes logical sense on the surface. But that assumption is killing your revenue. See, there are 4 reasons why most post-webinar sequences fail. Reason number 1 is no segmentation. They send the same email to the person who didn't show up, the person who watched the whole thing, and the person who left after 10 minutes. That's like doctor prescribing the same medicine to 3 completely different patients. And reason number 2 is stopping too early. Most follow-up sequences run for 5 to 7 days, but from what we see across all our clients, a meaningful chunk of buyers convert somewhere between day 8 and day 30. These are people who need more time to think, to talk to a spouse, to wait for a better moment. Maybe they're waiting for the paycheck. You stop reaching out right before they were ready. And reason number 3, 1 channel of follow-up only, email, and done. Meanwhile, your prospects on WhatsApp, scrolling Facebook, checking the text somewhere else entirely. And reason number 4 is all selling, no value. If your sequence is 21 days of last chance and price goes up emails, your prospect feels chased, and when you chase them, they run away. So what does a proper post-webinar sequence look like? The long-tail webinar sequence we develop is a 21 to 30-day behavior-based follow-up that kicks in the moment your webinar ends. Behavior-based is the key phrase here. What someone receives depends on what they actually did. Like, did they show up? Did they watch 80% of the replay? Did they visit the sales page but did not buy? Every action tells you something, and the sequence responds to that action. When we run this for our clients, we typically see a 30% uplift in post-event sales. You don't have to change the webinar, the offer, the ads, just what happens after the webinar ends. So let me walk you through the 6 ideas that make it work. All right, so first idea, segmentation. Right after your webinar ends, you got 3, possibly 4 distinct groups of people, and each one needs a completely different sequence. Group 1, the people who didn't show up. They registered with intent. Life got in the way. Baby was crying or the dog needed its dinner, but they still want what you were offering. They just need another chance to get it. Your job, invite them to the next webinar or an encore, or give them a replay. Don't treat them like they've already said no. They haven't. Group 2, people who attended to the end but didn't buy. This is your hottest group. They sat through your webinar. They saw the offer, but something held them back. Price, timing, or a specific objection. These people need more details. They need a VSL or a sales page, not the encore. they've already watched the whole presentation. Sending them back to the same content wastes their time and yours. And group 3, people who attended part of your webinar but didn't watch to the end where you made the offer. For this group, we send a replay because they were obviously interested enough to show up, but maybe they didn't understand the value of your content. That's where your emails need to persuade them to watch the replay. And finally, the 4th group are people who attended and bought. So make sure you have a good onboarding experience or else you lose them. So here's a real example of what happens when you get this right. My client Mark is a real estate investing coach. We put proper segmentation in place and ran an encore for the no-shows. Guess what? The encore webinar, which was basically a repeat of the first webinar, actually outsold the main event. People who missed the first one turned out to be some of his most ready buyers. They just needed another shot at seeing the offer. After implementing the full long tail system, Mark went from losing money on his webinars to 6 times ROAS. Nothing changed with the webinar, the offer, or the ads. The only difference I want to emphasize is the follow-up sequence that we ran after the event. So idea 2, let's say 500 people registered for your webinar. 180 showed up, 320 didn't. Of those 180, 160 didn't buy. So that's 480 people to follow up with. Segment differently, needing different messages at different times. And if you want to do that with an army of virtual assistants, that's probably not happening. This is where AI comes in. AI can monitor behavior signals across your entire lead list. Who clicked the sales page, who watched 80% of the replay, but never clicked the CTA, who opened 4 emails in a row, but never followed through. And based on those signals, the system adjusts the timing, the message, the channel, and the frequency automatically and engage them with messages. It can be in the form of a voice call or a text message. The key, remember, is not to hard sell, but to re-engage them with questions. What that means in practice, so 500 people can feel that they are getting a personal, timely follow-up without you or your team crafting 500 individual messages. Because in 2026, if you're sending the same broadcast system to your whole list and calling it a follow-up system, you're already behind. Now, idea 3 is probably the most counterintuitive idea in this video. I mean, we live in an age, as I just mentioned, where you can automate everything in your follow-up, but sometimes that can be a trap because when you're selling a high-ticket offer like 3,000, 10,000, 25,000, a well-timed automated SMS or email isn't enough to close the deal on its own. So what we found is that some prospects watch the full webinar, they open every email, they visit the sales page 3 times, they watch the replay, but they still haven't bought. And what actually moves them is actually a real person reaching out, maybe a 5-minute phone call, a personal WhatsApp message, not a broadcast, a genuine one-on-one saying, hey, I noticed you watched the replay and you mentioned this kind of outreach closes sales that 21 automated emails couldn't even get near. So here's the thing, right? You don't need to do this for everyone. The AI can do the segmentation, the heavy lifting, it monitors your behavior like I just mentioned just now. But those highly engaged but not converted prospects, the people who have shown real intent, your AI can even set the appointment, but your team then reaches out to that short list. Personal, specific, not mass messaging. Technology can handle the volume, but a real human handles the high-value conversations where the deal actually closes. Now, moving on to idea 4, the one I mentioned at the start. Very few people in the webinar space are actually doing this. After you email, why not just send a short survey or quiz? Not a sales email, not a last chance reminder, just a question. Make it an interaction rather than a one-way street in your conversation. Ask them, what is your biggest takeaway from the webinar? What was the biggest thing stopping you from taking the next step with us? Why does this work? A few reasons. First, it gives you intelligence. You find out exactly why people didn't buy. Was it price? Was it timing? A specific trust gap? That data makes your next webinar sharper and your follow-up sequence even sharper still. Second, it re-engages cold leads because someone who stopped opening your emails might respond to a survey because it feels completely different, or just a simple question from a human being, right? It's not another pitch. You're asking for their input, not their money. That's a different kind of request, and it gets a different response. Third, it gives you better segmentation data because someone who says, I can't afford it right now, you could follow up them in a different way than someone who says, I need to think about it more. Now you know exactly which bucket each person belongs in. And fourth, this is what really separates it. If you run it as a quiz with a personalized result at the end, you've created an interactive content piece that moves someone from cold to curious without hard selling. This is seriously underutilized, so try it out on your next webinar. And idea 5, this is one that addresses reason number 4 from the diagnosis, the all selling, no value problem. This is what a typical post-webinar inbox looks like to your prospects. The next several days after the webinar are buy now, bonus expiring, last chance, final reminder. By day 5, they've stopped opening your emails, right? They haven't unsubscribed, they're just tuning you out, and honestly, that's probably worse. Now, the long-tail webinar system works a bit differently. Yes, there is a sales sequence, but woven between the offers is real content. I mean, useful content that's pulled directly from your webinar. If you've presented 4 big ideas in your webinar, those become 4 standalone pieces. Short videos, an email breakdown, mini case study, maybe a behind-the-scenes clip. These content pieces do something that emails can't. They show your undecided prospects that you actually know what you're talking about. They remind people why they registered in the first place, and they build the kind of trust that tips someone from, I'm still thinking about it, to, okay, I'm in. This isn't 21 days of selling. It's 21 days of staying present through a mix of value, social proof, and well-timed offers. All right. So to the last one, if your post-webinar sequence only runs on email, you're reaching maybe 20 to 30% of your list on a good day. Everyone else, they're not opening or the message isn't landing. The long-tail webinar system runs across multiple channels. Email is the backbone, but alongside it, SMS for high urgency, time-sensitive messages. WhatsApp for more personal follow-up, especially in the markets where WhatsApp is a primary communication channel like Southeast Asia and Europe. Voice outreach, both AI-driven for your broader list and maybe live calls from your team for your highest intent prospects. And retargeting ads on Facebook and Instagram that show your registered leads a completely different messages. And retargeting ads on Facebook and Instagram that show your registered leads a completely different message in their newsfeed. Think about what that looks like from your prospect side. They register for your webinar. A few days later, they see a retargeting ad on their Facebook feed. They get an email. They get a personal WhatsApp message. They see a client testimonial on Instagram. They are surrounded by you. Not in an annoying way, more like, hey, this person keeps showing up everywhere, giving me content, giving me value. They're like thinking in their minds, wow, this guy must really know what they're doing. So every touch point builds trust. And when your prospect is finally ready to buy, whether that's on day 3 or day 21, yours is the first name they think about. All right, so let's bring this together. Most webinar hosts leave 30 to 40% of the post-event revenue untouched because they only do basic follow-up. They stop after a week and they use email only and send the same messages to everyone. The long-tail webinar system that I just described to you changes all that. So remember to segment your audience based on what they actually did. Let AI handle the volume and the personalization at scale, but keep real humans in the loop for your high-ticket, high-intent prospects. The ones who need a real conversation, not another email. Survey your leads midway through to find out why they didn't buy. Give them content along the offers. Don't just pitch. And show up on every channel that they're actually using. The webinar, the offer, the ads, those can stay the same because that 30% uplift lives in what you do after the event ends. And if you want more on how to build the full webinar funnel, the ads, landing page, improving show-up rates, and a post-event sequence of all working together, check the link below for my free training. It's a free resource. So if you found this episode helpful, please hit subscribe and leave a like. It really does help more people find this content, and plus it's good karma for you. And so thank you again for watching, and see you in the next episode.